1979 was a pivotal year in the history of Iran and its relationship with the United States. The Shah relinquished power to the Ayatollah Khomeini. Angry demonstrators took control of the U.S. Embassy, and the whole world watched as 52 Americans were taken hostage. As the events played out on the world stage, they were also part of the daily life of a young Jewish girl growing up in Tehran. Roya Hakakian was an eyewitness to the revolution and writes about it in her new book, Journey from the Land of No. Good morning. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
We first need to draw a little bit of a portrait of the city. There were 100,000 Jewish people living in Iran at the time, and a very well-established Jewish community with schools and prosperous in its own way.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that ironic that the Iranian Jewish community precedes, its history in Iran precedes that of the presence of Muslims in Iran, and hardly anyone knows about it. And people are shocked to find out that I'm a Jew and I lived in Iran until, a few years ago.
So you're there living with your family. Your father is an educator and this wonderful sort of celebrated, delicious life that you describe so beautifully in your book. And as the revolution comes, there's a feeling around the household that this is a big deal and this could be good for everybody.
Exactly. I think of the Iranian Revolution, even till today, with all the criticisms that in retrospect we are making about it, as the greatest event of my own personal life.
Right.
Something that I would not switch with anything else in the world. And it was because it took place for all the right reasons. The fact that it went wrong is a tragedy, but it took place because people demanded more civil liberties, more democracy, openness, all the kinds of things that all the Middle East is really vying for these days.
There's so much going on over there right now. What's going on in Lebanon, and this sort of this bursting of emotion, and you're saying this is very similar to what happened in Iran in the.
I'm willing to argue that it all began in Iran, and I think Iran is really where the pivot of this earthquake, or actually the center of this earthquake, was in '78, and the reverberations are still being felt since '78.
And of course, as it then unfolds, it becomes very repressive, and literally your lives become in danger.
Yes, yes. The transformation from, those moments of ecstasy and euphoria and the complete conviction that things were going to be a lot better than they had been, to, the dark history that we experienced 2 or 3 years later, are very important, not just for us as Iranians, but for the rest of the world. Because Iran in '78 and '79 was one of the most modern countries in the Middle East, and it became a fundamentalist nation. How? Why? Why was it that religion became so powerful in a country that had a modern experience in a matter of 2 or 3 years? I think those lessons are important for all of us.
Because in the early days in this book, as you talk about your childhood, there was a sense that people could live together, that Jews and Muslims could live together in this society. And by the end, you're marked people.
Yes. Yes. Iran in the 70s was at its most glorious in terms of exactly the kind of coexistence that you're talking about it. We lived on a block, an alley that I call the Alley of the Distinguished in the book. We